Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM 93.3. Well, the election has been turned up to level 11. Like Spinal Tap, don't be obstinate here. And of course, every time we have a presidential election, things get hot and heavy. People get emotional. Things get a little testy in the last few days before the actual day. But is this election any worse? Let's ask my first guest, Presley Baker, back on the James Show. Does this seem to be a more contentious election than elections past?
You know, I wouldn't say it's more contentious than the past two elections we've had, because I think since Donald Trump kind of hopped onto the scene, that everything about him has been contentious, and everybody on the other side has had contention with him. So I wouldn't say it's more contentious, but in terms of polling, it's way closer than I think polls have showed in the last couple election cycles, because I mean none of the polls right now are showing anyone has a chance out of the margin of error of really taking home any of these swing states here.
So the final pitch we're seeing from each side, what do you think their attempted message is? I
think the Trump campaign's attempted message is to focus on the issues that matter and to stay away from, I guess, the political side of it, which is kind of a different take than he's usually making. But I think they really want, I've said this on your show a couple times, they really want voters to focus on the economy and to focus on if they were better 4 years ago under Trump than they are under Biden, and that this is going to be a continuation of the Biden presidency and Bidenomics if we have Harris in there. Whereas Harris, on the other hand, I think is making it more of a politics are your morals kind of situation, and is really trying to guilt people with the whole abortion topic. And I don't know if abortion is enough to push her over the edge.
Well, according to surveys, 30% of the female voters that are voting Democrat say they're doing it based on abortion alone.
Yeah, and I personally don't think anyone should single issue vote in any aspect. I think that there are clearly issues that people are going to prioritize, and obviously abortion and access to health care is going to be more of a priority for women than it will be for men. But the reality of the abortion topic is that 70% of Americans think there should be some form of legal abortion. And Donald Trump has actually done a pretty good job of saying that I'm not going to sign a national abortion ban. I'm going to leave it to the states, like the Supreme Court said. And I don't understand the rhetoric of banking everything on abortion that Kamala Harris is trying to do right now. I mean, I saw a clip from Michelle Obama talking to male voters saying that, you know, that if you care about the women in your life, imagine them on an operating table not being able to get the health care they need. And I think that that's crazy rhetoric.
Right, the health care they need. I like how they encompass this as all health care. No, it's just that one thing. It's just that no one's trying to stop them from getting a pap smear or a strep test. It's just that one thing. It has nothing else to do with anything healthcare related. It's just that one thing. So,
and the visual she painted was really graphic, and it was yeah, there are some issues with legality of abortion and reproductive health care that are in certain states that limit abortion, right? But like I haven't heard something that graphic used in that kind of context in this election cycle yet.
I'm going to ask you an impossible question, Presley Baker.
Sure.
Are they going to do that crap where they stop voting at 1:00 in the morning and put up a bunch of poster board in the windows and turn the lights off?
You know, I think they're going to have some more issues doing that this time than they did last time around, because I really think there's going to be a lot of eyes on this election from people that aren't usually paying as much attention because of how in contention the 2020 election was and Donald Trump's whole take on it. So I really think you'll have a lot more eyes and a lot more coverage from not just journalists and media, but from people on the streets and at the election sites that are going to be, we'll see a lot more videos and pictures from election sites, I think.
How easy is it doing a political podcast, doing a show in a time like this?
I mean, it's entertaining, right? You got a lot of material to talk about, but it's never easy because, you know, somebody's going to be mad at you no matter what opinion you give. But at least there's something to talk about right now, and Trump's a good character. So,
what's it feel like having the president of the United States refer to you as garbage, Presley?
You know, that kind of stuff doesn't really faze me anymore. I mean, that's been happening for a long time. But I mean, didn't Hillary Clinton call all Trump supporters deplorables? Like just just back in 2016. So
yeah, look, I kind of agree. I can't pretend to be offended by that. They were calling me a Nazi and a fascist the day before yesterday, so this is an improvement. Garbage, I'll take it. Garbage, fine. It's better than Nazi.
What? The overuse of the term Nazi and Hitler, and it cheapens the word.
You said the secret word. All right, Presley Baker, how do they find your work outside of WBAP?
You can find me on The Baker Take. It's a politically driven podcast, but talks about a lot of lifestyle and sports stuff too, and that's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
All right, there she is, Presley Baker. Thanks for being on the James Show again. Yes, it is kind of fun here in the last week before an election, just watching these people. Because, look, you know how excited you are when you go on a job interview and then you got to wait for that phone call to come back and you're waiting for the day to find out if you got the job? Yeah, that's pretty exciting, right? Well, you weren't running for president. These people are running for president. You think there's a little bit of excitement going on, bubbling under the surface, them and all the people around them and everyone they're related to and everyone they've ever known. They're in a tornado of excitement. I was pretty excited to get this job. I couldn't imagine finding out in about 5 days if I'm going to be president or not. But I'd like to hear from some more early voting reports. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Coming up next, you're going to hear how the media is pretending like garbage isn't the worst insult in the world anymore. It's pretty funny. I'm James Parker. It's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. What's up? Welcome back to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Oh, look at the nice little freelance James Show reporters lining up. I appreciate that. You guys are the best. How was your voting experience so far? 800-288-9227. Just to catch you up on what is sadly one of the top stories of the day, the garbage gate. Can we call it that? Garbage gate? So stupid. So on Sunday, there was a rally at Madison Square Garden. Some say it was a Nazi rally. Some say it was just a Trump rally. There was a comedian who was like the opening act who said there's a pile of garbage floating in the Caribbean. It's called Puerto Rico. And it's just a basic little burn. But we had to act like it was the worst insult ever. We had to act like this was racist, Nazi, apartheid, everything. It was like the... Here, I'll just let you hear it.
The opening act, grabbing headlines for all the wrong reasons. A comedian who offered unfunny, racist, cringeworthy jokes.
Basically calling Puerto Ricans trash.
The most repulsive racial jokes about Latinos.
Disgusting and hateful.
So incredibly crude.
Frankly, just too X-rated to play here.
Extremely vile so-called jokes.
So too X-rated to play there. Wow. Racist, vile. You heard all the fascist fun stuff, right? And then Joe Biden goes out there and makes the same claim about you or Trump supporters. So what does that mean?
Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable, and it's un-American.
He called us garbage. Well, does that make it him racist? Does that make him horrible? Does that make him cringeworthy? So-called joke. Does that make it too X-rated to even play here? By the way, there's nothing X-rated about the joke. It's not like there was an F-bomb or the areola made an appearance. It was just it was kind of funny joke. It wasn't great. So now we have the media having to do a 180 after telling you for the first 2 days this week, Monday and Tuesday, referring to a group of people as garbage is the worst thing ever. I just want you... Here, let me do one more of how they treated the joke. This is Mika Brzezinski, I think on Monday.
A lot of people are seeing that rally at Madison Square Garden, seeing all those people. Doesn't mean he's going to win the race. But my point is it's discouraging that so many people would gather and rally to hate speech in America. That it's discouraging and it hurts.
It hurts?
That people...
Where does it hurt?
Who have... family in Puerto Rico, who are Puerto Rican Americans, who are American citizens, are hearing hate like that. It's discouraging. And it's not just, oh my gosh, about the race. It's, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
How did we get here? How did we get here? Where a stadium of people come to hate. That's a different country, a different time.
Okay, now that's what happens when Team Red calls you garbage. Team Blue calls you garbage. Let's see how MSNBC reacted today. They condemn it or they make excuses for it? Same people. Here we go.
Well, of course. And Donald Trump says shocking things every day in Fox News. And
and all of his apologists of the Republican Party immediately go to it and brush it off, explain it away, or just completely ignore it. Here, they're trying to make a firestorm out of something that, again, if you look at it, you look at what he said immediately afterward, which Donald Trump didn't say.
Garbage.
He immediately afterwards said, no, that's not what I meant. I was talking about the comedian and people that supported that kind of talk.
Yeah, nuance.
Willie, Joe Biden obviously doesn't believe that.
He doesn't believe that. He just said it, y'all. He doesn't believe it.
A hurricane, after a hurricane, I believe, and Joe Biden went in. And he went and he talked to the crowd, went over, talked to a guy who was a big Trump supporter.
Yeah, he's a nice, uniting guy. He wouldn't call people garbage. You just heard him call you garbage, but he didn't mean it.
People together and even saying, hey, I'll wear your Trump cap. We're all on the same team.
Yeah, see, he's not hateful. He's not hateful when he says it. He's a uniter.
Yeah, it could be a case, and people can watch and judge for themselves, of President Biden not being articulate or not being able to put the thought together the way he wanted to, which is kind of what he suggested later. Again, he's not at the top of the ticket. He's not running, but it's a question of John's kind of an apostrophe, really. So people should watch the clip and really decide for themselves if they think that's something that Joe Biden would say, given his career and his life.
Because he's a nice guy.
Trump supporters are garbage. Of course, Donald Trump has described repeatedly recently the entire country, the United States, as a garbage can. So take that for what it's worth as well.
Yes, the United States being treated as a garbage can. You know that's not the same thing. Isn't that great? Just to hear him go back and forth. Donald Trump's reaction is kind of like mine. I'm not offended by it. I'm garbage, whoop-de-doo. You calling me a Nazi yesterday, so this is a promotion. But Trump, he gives him a little leeway. He's magnanimous.
So you have, remember Hillary, she said deplorable? And then she said irredeemable, right? But she said deplorable. That didn't work out. Garbage, I think, is worse, right? But he doesn't know. You have to please forgive him. Please forgive him, for he not knoweth what he said.
All right, let's get some freelance James Show reporters. If you have a early voting report, 800-288-9227. Robert and Garland, how was your early voting experience on WBAP?
Well, it was scary.
What?
I went. It was scary. I tapped right in the middle of the Trump button. Harris lit up. I fixed it. Trump lit up. I'm going through the form. It gives me the opportunity to go back and check it, come back up. Harris is lit up again. So I fixed it again. Finally, the card printed out, and it did say Trump, but I'm like, I still don't trust it.
What's your voting location?
Harry Style Recreation Center in Dallas.
They named a recreation center after the guy from One Direction. That has to be a different guy. Ignore me. I get thrown off easily. All right. And what day did you vote?
I think that was Thursday, second day of early voting.
I'm kind of tired of hearing this. I'm glad you called, and I'm glad I'm hearing it if it's happening. I just want to hear, and this isn't on you, Robert. Is anyone on Team Blue? Did you try and vote for Kamala Harris and your vote got switched to Trump? Like you pushed the touch screen on Kamala and it picked Trump? Because if this is all going one direction, and understandably, if I don't ask for it, I might just get reports that only go in one direction, given the nature of my platform. But I would like to, I know about 20% of y'all listening right now voted for Kamala Harris. Did any of y'all have similar issues to Robert and Garland? And thank you, Robert. That's a good report there. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Harry Styles has a convention center? That's a trip. Do I have time for it? All right, Mason and Ponder, you got about 30 seconds. What's your early voting report?
I voted about a week ago with my newborn son. So there's no excuse. Go out there and vote.
What does your newborn son have to do with it?
People have excuses, you know.
Well, congratulations on the kid.
Baby.
All right, I'll take it. Yeah, Mason's guilt tripping you out there. He's got a newborn kid, and he neglected him for the entire time it took him to go vote, I guess. I don't making sacrifices. You can't get a babysitter. Anyway, good stuff. If you have some more early voting reports, I would love to hear it. 800-288-9227. Coming up in about 7 minutes. How crazy is too crazy for either your hippie aunt or your prepper uncle? You know, these people that get really too far into politics. Well, what's the line before you start calling them crazy? We'll talk about that next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM At 93.3, welcome back to the big show. If you want to give me your early voting reports, you are now officially invited to be a freelance James Show reporter. Call in 800-288-9227. I'll get you on the air. You tell me where you voted, how long it took, what the process was like, any shenanigans, and then you can go on about your day. But it's just good to hear from people around North Texas, get a feel for, and even if everything went okay, we like to get a lot of this stuff on the record because there's some places where everything didn't go okay. And if we start to notice patterns, then maybe we can do something about it. My next guest has been on the show quite a bit lately, talking about the stress that the political season can bring on relationships. And look, even when we're not in political season, by the way, Jennifer Hargrave Family Law, welcome back. Even when we're not hot and heavy in a political season, there are people who go down these, I guess, politically based rabbit holes, but they get a world view that sort of interrupts what was otherwise a healthy relationship. And just to use an example, not to pick on lefties too much, let's pick on right wingers. If you start prepping and digging out a bomb shelter in your backyard, that could probably cause a little stress in a relationship if both of you aren't in on it. Is there some point that's a cutoff to say, hey, you either need to come back to reality or we split?
I think what I'm seeing these days is that the digging into the ideologies, it is causing rift in marriages. And so where maybe couples weren't so deeply entrenched in their, political viewpoints, and they are now, and they're not aligned on that, it can cause a lot of disruption in a marriage.
Well, and I've also seen kind of the opposite. I know sort of a couple friend, and they're both really into that. They're preppers, man, and that's their jam, and they sort of feed off each other, but they have a business and they're providing for themselves, and there seems to be no negative consequences to it. It's just a weird hobby from the outside.
Oh, if you're aligned and you both are preppers, as you said, then that's not a dispute. I think the problem is when somebody suddenly takes a turn during the marriage, right, where they weren't at the beginning that impassioned about something, whether it's, being a prepper or not. But then during the marriage, they really become entrenched in that, and the other partner isn't. That's where the discord happens.
How bad does it have to be before it becomes like a custody issue? Like if you have an ex and y'all have split custody and they're trying to gain more custody or something to that effect because of your, political extremism, does that ever cause problems?
It can. It just depends on how it manifests itself, right? So if you are the ideology that you're, embroiled in is one where you're not be able to look out for the safety and welfare of your child. Maybe you're pulling them out of schools, or just making kind of decisions about not getting them medical care or things like that, then another parent who has different views could certainly ask the court to intervene and be the decision maker. But you have to understand that when that happens, you're putting your child's life, in the hands of a judge.
That's a side thought a lot of us have. I know I've had it. I imagine the person listening too has. When you see these goobers that like glue their hand to the street, couldn't that be used against them? Like, hey, Your Honor, can we rail back some of their custody or visitation or something? They're clearly not in a good mental state.
Yeah, right. If you've got somebody who's got some mental health issues that are impeding their good judgment and ability to make decisions for the child, yes. And sometimes you see that, right? You see people taking kind of positions to an extreme. It doesn't matter what it is. But if you're gluing your hand to the sidewalk, that might be an indicator. But, it could also, not. It just depends on how it's going to impact your child and whether it's symptomatic of larger issues going on in your life or, just something you wanted to do that day.
Can you lose custody for being a Nazi?
That's a good question. I haven't had that come up. I think that probably if you're a Nazi, the judge might have some concerns about how that's going to impact your child. So, it could be. It just depends. I think just holding beliefs in and of themselves is not going to deprive you of your right to parent your child. But if the things that you're doing are seen as detrimental to your child by the judge, by the evaluators who are intervening, the professional opinions, then depending on the extent to which you're taking these beliefs. I mean, I think what's important to hammer home is it's not the belief itself that's problematic. It's how those beliefs are shaping the actions that you're taking.
Well, yeah, and as much as we hear about the fascists and Nazis and whatever in the news, you notice no one names their kid Adolf these days, do they? That's not a popular name, as popular as it used to be. Jennifer Hargrave Family Law, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I like making people uncomfortable with Nazi questions. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm not going to ask any Nazi questions. I just want to hear about your early voting experience here in North Texas. I want to know where, how long it took, and what the process was like. We're looking for shenanigans. 800-288-9227. Hey, last week a former model claimed that Trump groped her. Hey, what happened to that story? I'll tell you about it in 5 minutes on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. The polls. My next guest is from Real Clear Politics, the king of aggregating polls. It's James Varney's back on. James, I just saw a sign that broke my heart. Some Yankee from up north took a picture of the window in their subway. And this is why the polls are moving in Trump's direction. It's at a Subway, and instead of saying $5 footlongs, it says 6 inches, $6. That's how bad inflation has gotten and how fast it's fallen. I think that's got to be the biggest issue and sort of the explanation on why polls seem to be drifting that way.
Well, you may be right about that. I think that most of the voters have said that the economy is their number one issue. Immigration is another issue that most voters have said is very important to them. And if you look simply from those two things, though, James, the economy and immigration, then you would think Trump would win in a landslide because the record of the current administration is so abysmal on both of those counts. And despite all her rhetoric, Kamala Harris is running as the incumbent. She owns that. And the fact that it's tied, I think, tells us that we have no idea what's going to happen. And I think that if you look at the Real Clear Politics polling average, which thank you for mentioning several times, and we appreciate that, it says it's tied. It doesn't say that Trump is winning. And I think that there is a remarkable level of confidence that I'm reading and sensing among conservatives that I think I don't want to sound like a downer, but I would caution them, don't forget what happened in 2022, and don't think that the polls are the most accurate predictor of what's going to happen on Tuesday.
Fair enough. But why are you garbage?
Why am I garbage?
Well, the president called you garbage yesterday, so I just wanted to get your response to that.
Well, I do think that two things about that. One is saying that they're garbage and they're Nazis, half the country, and the people that support Trump is an extraordinary political message. You wouldn't think that would really help either unify the country or grow your base and help you win the election. But you and I don't know how much the people that are watching MSNBC and reading the New York Times and all those people in Washington, how much do they even know about what Biden said? They're still talking about a joke that was told at a Trump rally in Madison Square Garden. And you see that all the time in the emphasis on these things. I mean, look, the fact that Biden even said that and spoke at the same time that Kamala was giving her closing speech, that's an astounding level of incompetence, it seems to me.
Well, incompetence?
You even say don't do it at the same time?
Or,
regardless of what he said.
Varnes, is he just sandbagging her?
I know that I have seen some people surmising that might have something to do with it, and jokes about Dr. Joe Biden being
Doctor, yes, please, sir. Right. Well, great doctor.
I think it's more likely just, as I said, a colossal level of incompetence to have them both be speaking at the same time, regardless of what Biden said.
Let me make it a little worse, James. Why are they letting Joe Biden do any media whatsoever? At this point, he can only screw things up. There's nothing he can go out there and say that would help the case or make her more likely to win. He can only screw things up. So why are they even letting him out to go get like the ice cream, much less doing interviews? Right. They're nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I think the answer to that is that you've got two operations going on at once, right? There is Kamala Harris running for president, and she's the vice president. And then you have this fiction that they have maintained for 4 years that Joe Biden is a capable and working president. I mean, you and I have talked all this right. election cycle about astonishing things. Was there anything more remarkable than the fact that the United States has essentially not had a president for 5 months or something? Publicly acknowledged. I mean, that's been the case throughout his administration. He was never in charge.
For 4 years now.
When he got elected in 2020. But it's astounding, isn't it?
Well,
and Glenn Greenwald, of all people, who, as you know, is a left-wing journalist, formerly of The Guardian, I think formerly of The Intercept, now independent, and he was saying, this just shows you, or it should show Americans, that your government is being run by an unelected bureaucracy. There's no president, and it doesn't seem to matter.
Right, and if you didn't believe in a deep state before, you better believe in one now.
Right.
This is not the guy in charge, and it really seems. What makes it seem like a setup, even more so, is if I had an earpiece in Biden's ear, like in Impractical Jokers, and I was going to try and trick him into saying the dumbest thing possible yesterday, I would have him call Trump supporters garbage. Like, he could have called them anything else, and it wouldn't have been stepping in the dog poop. Like, my father-in-law can go walk into a yard that has one pile of poop in it, and he will step in it no matter what. He will find a way to step in it. That is like the only thing he could have called Trump supporters that could have undermined the narrative. They spent the last 48 hours trying to convince America that calling people garbage was akin to Hitler. And I said the secret word. I got it. And then I'll be damned. He said the one magic word that would screw everything up.
Well, but again, that's what I was saying a moment ago, James, does it really? I mean, I don't know how many people in the country are aware of that and focused on it. It seems to me like it's just the Trump people. If you look at what most of the people in my profession have done since Biden said that, it's working really hard to claim that he didn't say that. I don't know if it was an official White House transcript that put an apostrophe in there, but you saw Politico did a story where they actually added words.
Yeah. They're covering for him.
By the way, the guy who wrote that got promoted. He's now going to be, I think, hosting Morning Joe. So here's a guy who's probably going to start making $1 million a year. What does he care, right?
Well, how do you think you get on Morning Joe? Telling the truth?
I have no idea.
Exactly.
I couldn't begin to tell you, but it certainly isn't by calling it straight and just calling balls and strikes, which you would think. I was always taught and believed that was the job of a journalist, but it's not anymore. So I don't know how much that's going to play. And I'll tell you one other thing, and I don't mean to hog up your time, but I can point to 4 states where something's going on right now that ought to give conservatives pause about what's going to happen on Tuesday. And I'm just, again, I don't want to sound like a downer, but I see this kind of heady optimism like you did in 2022 before the midterms, like Trump's going to win this, surging momentum going his way. The Democrats have a terrible record. Well, all of that was true in 2022, and there was no red wave. So I think Trump supporters should be on guard, and I think they should vote.
All good advice. Thank you very much, James Varney. Find his work, realclearpolitics.com, realclearinvestigations.com. His latest one about climate splurges, just handing out billions of your tax dollars to cronies. Excellent work. We'll have to have him on again. Last week, I thought about doing this story. CNN seemed to have an exclusive. I didn't see it on MSNBC or Fox News or whatever. And, well, good for CNN. What they got here? Well, they have a former swimsuit model. And she came out with the claim that Trump groped her. Now, immediately you're suspicious, and rightfully so. This is a man who has already run for president once, had all kinds of accusations thrown at him, the Hollywood, Access Hollywood tapes, all that good stuff, E. Jean Carroll. He ran for president again in 2020. We had more accusations coming out. In the meantime, we've had 94 charges pressed against him with 34 felonies being convicted on him. He's been to court in 4 different jurisdictions now, civil lawsuits, all kinds of crap's been thrown at him. And you're just now coming out with it 2 weeks before the election. Excuse me if I'm skeptical, but I went and dug into it. Because now I'm glad I didn't report on it at the time because it totally went away. I mean, you may not have even heard of it. Is this a new story to you? See, this is the trial balloons that they do. They put stories out there and see if it catches on. And if it does, cool. If not, they just move on and come up with the next live, the next salacious hit piece. The lady's name is Stacey Williams. And I suspect one of the big reasons why this story didn't catch on is because it matches some of the other stories. We have a year that it happened and we have a location, but we don't really have a date. She does tell other people about the story, but when you get into the details, it's not really that bad. Worst case scenario, even if everything she said happens to be 100% true, Trump may have brushed up against her side boob. Oh, not the side boob. Not the side boob. Now, I respect and admire the side boob. In fact, I think in modern 2020 times, side boob is the new cleavage. Actually, that's kind of an under boob is taking the place in our culture that side boob used to occupy. But enough about that. I could go on for another hour. Here's the funky part about it. You know who she was dating at the time that Trump supposedly, and look what it's described as a long hug, and then he ran his hands up and down the sides of her. So he touched like the side of her hips, her waistline, kind of the outside of her behind, and just kind of ran his hands up and down both sides of her. Her boyfriend at the time, you'll recognize his name, Jeffrey Epstein. That's who she was dating in 1993 when she goes and gets a long hug from Trump. You're dating the world's most renowned and highest profile pedophile in human history, basically, at least in our time. How about it? Of a generation, the greatest pedophile of a generation, the greatest creeper of a dude who has a private island in the Caribbean dedicated just to doing creepy things. That was your boyfriend at the time. And you're like, man, this Donald Trump guy, he sure is creepy. No, Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend doesn't get to say that. Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend doesn't get to say like, my radar's going off. He's sending up red flags for me. No, your radar's broken, lady. Isn't that adorable? Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend was an attempted moral crusade against Donald Trump. How low do you have to stoop? I mean, Jeffrey Epstein's dead, or they probably would have gone to him himself. Or it was Ghislaine Maxwell? Was she not available for comment to make up some story about Trump? Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. How was your experience early voting? Let me hear it. 800-288-9227. Early voting reporters, freelance James Show reporters. You're still needed. You're going to be needed through Tuesday. 800-288-9227. Now, there's been some shenanigans going on. And every election has some shenanigans, some story somewhere about something funky happening. So it's not, the end of the world that we're having some of these stories. The problem is, are we having too many? Let me bring you the next law enforcement. This is the district attorney in a county in Pennsylvania. And they've busted, her name's Heather Adams. They've busted some fraudulent voter registration. Did you hear about this?
In some cases, applications contained correct personal identification information, such as the correct address, correct phone number, date of birth, driver's license number, and social security number. But the individuals listed on the applications informed detectives that they did not request the form, they did not complete the form, and verified that the signature on the form was not theirs. At this point, it is believed that the fraudulent voter registrations are connected to a large-scale canvassing operations for voter registrations that date back to June.
All right, let me skip down to a little later in her press conference. Heather Adams talking about fraudulent voter registration being caught in an investigation in Pennsylvania, swing state, kind of a big deal.
Good morning, everyone. District Attorney Heather Adams. On Tuesday afternoon, I was contacted by Krista Miller, who is our Chief Clerk of Elections, regarding potentially fraudulent voter registration applications that had recently been received by her office. At that time, she informed me that the Elections Office received approximately 2,500 applications at or near the deadline for registering to vote. While preparing to process these applications, staff noticed that numerous applications appeared to have the same handwriting, were filled out on the same day with unknown signatures, and some were previously registered voters, excuse me, and the signatures on file did not match the signatures on the application.
All right, we don't expect in a nation of 330 million people for everyone to follow the law, and just because there's a couple of scofflaws out there doesn't mean we have a systemic problem. But let's ask someone who's spent her career in law enforcement, Sergeant Betsy Brentner Smith, back on the James Show. Betsy, in your time as a law enforcement officer, how is this more or less than the normal shenanigans that we see during an election? Do you ever see anything like this?
Well, let's remember that I spent 29 years in the Chicago suburbs, so we kind of invented shenanigans there in Chicago. So,
Well, you're the perfect person to ask. You're one of the top experts then. So, just gauging this, does this happen every election somewhere?
There is always something somewhere. I now live in a quote-unquote swing state. I live in Arizona. And so I see some of, what's happening here and things like that. We had 3 ballot boxes burned in Portland and Vancouver, Washington, Portland, Oregon, Vancouver, Washington. Again, a few ballots damaged, and that's being rectified, and it looks like they're going to be able to identify the suspect. But there's always something that happens, whether it's somebody tries to use somebody else's ballot, there's fake registrations, things like that. That is just what you get in a system that is put on by free people. You're always going to have bad guys. You're always going to have criminals. What we need to do as a country, I believe, is when we have these situations where there is nefarious, when somebody fakes a voter registration, I think they should go to prison. When people ballot harvest, for example, in Arizona, that's a felony, they should go to prison. And that we, the American people, have to, I believe, support legislators who are going to get that done.
Well, do these people go to prison? I mean, I hear stories, I guess, every once in a while, but it seems pretty rare that people actually get handcuffs on them and spend any time.
It's very rare. You'd have to really be involved in a very, very large-scale operation. I think if we did a better job of punishing these situations like we used to, say 20 or 30 years ago when I was a young police officer and watching a poll, for example. We just didn't have back in the day, and I'm going to sound like my grandma now. Right. We didn't have the nasty rhetoric, and we didn't have we also didn't have the electronic nature of voting and registration and all of that, so the ability to defraud people that we now have. So, part of that is just we're an evolved society now, and as society evolves, so do criminals.
Yeah, I wish there was someone out there who was about 120, 130 years old, because I would ask them, did people get called Nazis this much in the 1930s when there was actually Nazis? Because I think it may be more than when there were actually Nazis in positions of power on planet Earth. Sergeant Betsy Brentner Smith, National Police Association, give them the 30-second pitch.
Go to nationalpolice.org, nationalpolice.org. See all the amazing work that we are doing. We have a great team of attorneys. We have that free homeschool program. We've got a great social media presence. Follow us on X and hit that donate button if you can. We need your donations to keep doing this great work that we do. All
right, when we're done with all this election stuff, we need to set aside a time to talk about that homeschool stuff. All right, Betsy?
I can't wait.
All right. Nationalpolice.org. 800-288-9227 if you have a early voting report. You want to be a freelance reporter for the James Show. 800-288-9227. More on that fraudulent voter registration scandal from Pennsylvania coming up on the James Show. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. So did you hear in the last segment that the district attorney, Heather Adams, up in Pennsylvania, and I believe this is suburban Philadelphia metro area, fraudulent voter registrations, big pile of them. They got a big stack, 2,500 voter registration applications right before the deadline. That's suspicious right there. And when they go through it, a whole bunch of them have the same handwriting. Some of them have the wrong address. Some of them have the correct address, but when they call the people at the address, they say, we didn't fill that out. Someone filled that out on our behalf. Someone's getting voter registration information, filling out cards on behalf of people who haven't registered yet. And if they know who these people are, well, then you can go vote in their name on election day. And if they're not even registered, you're pretty safe that they're not going to show up at the polls 5 hours later and say, oh, no, you've already voted. Even if they did, too late. You already got your vote in, your stolen vote in. And so the question is, well, look, you find a couple of bad apples. That doesn't mean you spoil the whole bunch. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So just how many of these 2,500 or so applications that they got at the last minute, how many of them in the investigation were proven to be fraudulent? That number will shock you.
Thus far, of the investigations that we have completed, we have determined that 60% have been fraudulent. That is of the investigations that we've completed.
Not 10%, not half, 60% of the voter registration applications in their investigation were fraudulent. 60% of 2,500. You don't think that's enough to start swaying an election if you replicate these efforts from county to county, from office to office throughout Pennsylvania? You don't think an election hangs in the balance there? Because if you do that in just a couple more places, you have more than the margin of victory that came out of Pennsylvania the last couple elections. It's a tight race, and it's expected to be super tight. It's one of those that's neck and neck in the polls right now. Just throwing it out there, not trying to freak anybody out, just letting you know. For all these people who are going to try and tell you if their team wins, this was an up and up election. This was the most perfect elections, safest election in history. No, it's not. Hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. I know, let's go. Let's go. We are in the final stretch. We are in, tomorrow, football parlance. We're in the 2-minute warning here. We're in the, I didn't mean to get you excited here. Football hadn't been really a source of joy for Cowboy fans this year. But here we are, just a few days away. What are we, 5 days away from the election? 6 days away, something to that effect? Hang on, I have it written. 6 days away. 6 days away from the election. Polling numbers are about as tight as you have ever seen them for any presidential election in your lifetime. And to help make sense of what's going on here in the last run, Ashley Smith-Thomas is back on the James Show. Welcome back. First off, do you believe the polls, Ashley?
Well, first, thank you for having me. And that is such a great question. Looking at all these polls, many of them, including some from your mainstream media, is showing that Kamala Harris is only 1 percentage point ahead of Trump. So Harris is at 48%. Trump is at 47%.
Now, that's just the national poll, right? That's the beauty contest. So we don't really put a whole lot of stock in that, although it is interesting to see how close it is. What about the swing states? How are we doing over there?
So according to ABC News, the national polls are showing that in regards to the swing states, that Trump is ahead in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona. Right now, polls show that Harris is ahead in Nevada, Wisconsin, and Michigan. But even in these swing states, the margin is incredibly close. So again, these polls are showing that there's not much of a 1, maybe 2 point lead from either candidate. So again, this is going to be a very tight race when Election Day is coming here on Tuesday. It's going to be interesting to watch, but all eyes are on these swing states to see if this will even shift and make a difference in the overall national election.
Well, and I saw the report that the Kamala Harris campaign took a couple $1 million of advertising away from North Carolina and moved it to Virginia. But when I go look at the map, North Carolina didn't lean red. It's still a toss-up state, and Virginia still leans blue. It's not even in the toss-up category. So that doesn't make sense. With what they're actually doing on the ground doesn't match with what the polls are saying.
Correct. So that really doesn't make sense what Harris did in regards to Virginia. I think probably a lot of that, too, was the fact that she gave her speech last night there in Washington, D.C., in the same location in which President Trump gave his speech during the January 6th, 2021 incident. And so she, from that standpoint, was trying to make a point. So unless they were trying to shift the money to really drive home that Trump is a threat to democracy, that's probably the only reason why she did that. But really, her time needs to be spent, again, in these swing states like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Wisconsin, and what she's been polling in those states to where Right now, again, Pennsylvania is only showing 1 point ahead with Trump. North Carolina, Trump is 1 point ahead. And Arizona and Georgia, he's only 2 points ahead. But again, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because these numbers are so close. And it's whether or not you can actually believe these national polls. But she's really going to have to work it here in these swing states. I know that reports are indicating that her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, is also campaigning aggressively there in North Carolina and Pennsylvania. Same thing with Trump. J.D. Vance is aggressively campaigning in Pennsylvania along with Tulsi Gabbard today.
The garbage back and forth, is that going to have any effect on the outcome, or is this just a little flare up at like a little hissy fit at the end?
I think it's a hissy fit at the end. Comedians, Marco Rubio did such a good job in Pennsylvania the other day explaining that the garbage comment didn't come from President Trump. That came from a comedian. Comedians are offensive anyway.
Well, and he's a roast comedian. He's specifically a guy that his entire career is running around insulting people.
Exactly. So I think I think the left is making a mountain out of a molehill. And so when President Biden called 74 million Trump voters garbage, again, it just goes to show how the Democrat Party, is not really about unity. They're quite divisive. Kamala Harris came out today with a statement saying that she doesn't accept the same sentiments as President Biden, that she is a candidate for all people. So we'll see if that really is, to her best interest. But I think at this point, it's not really going to make any difference when it comes to Election Day, the garbage comment.
Yeah, I kind of have a feeling that's not going to be remembered 5 days from now. Tell them about Freedom's Fund USA.
Yeah, so Freedom's Fund USA, we're a nonprofit that works to protect freedom and national security. We work in the policy arena and do some humanitarian work. We also try to empower women to get involved in government and the national security arena. So to learn more, you can follow us at freedomsfundusa.org, or you can follow me on social media at Ashley Smith Thomas.
Thank you very much, Ashley. Good to talk to you again.
Thank you.
All right, coming up next, J.D. Vance got into it with Jake Tapper. I have some receipts from about 5 years ago that are not going to make Jake Tapper look very good. And plus, we have some great James Show freelance reporters with their early voting reports coming up as well. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. This is The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.